Clara sat in her tiny workshop, surrounded by old, rusted machines and broken gadgets. The air smelled of oil and metal, and the steady hum of her soldering iron filled the room. Her wheelchair squeaked slightly as she leaned forward, carefully connecting two loose wires. Sparks flew, and the small motor she had been working on whirred to life. She smiled, a brief, tired smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. For 10 years, Clara had been bound to the chair, her legs useless after a car accident had crushed her spine. But her hands, her brilliant mind, and her determination had never stopped working. Her days were often the same, tinkering with discarded technology she found in junkyards or traded for spare parts. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was hers. And in her little workshop, she felt free, free to create, to dream, and to escape the reality that had confined her for so long. Still, some nights were harder than others. Tonight was one of them. Clara glanced at the framed photo on her workbench. It showed a younger version of herself, standing tall and laughing with her parents at the edge of a hiking trail. Her heart ached. She missed the wind on her face, the feeling of running, jumping, and dancing. She missed the life she used to have. But dreams of walking again felt impossible. The doctors had been clear. No surgery, no treatment could fix her. The technology simply didn't exist, not yet. So she had stopped hoping. Hope, she had learned, could be cruel. A knock on the workshop door startled her. She wasn't expecting anyone. Rolling her chair back, she hesitated. Most people didn't bother with her. A woman in a wheelchair living on the edge of the city wasn't exactly someone people sought out. "Come in," she called out, her voice cautious but steady. The door creaked open, and a man stepped inside. He was tall, with graying hair and sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to study everything at once. He wore a long coat that brushed the floor, and in his hands, he carried a sleek, black briefcase. "Clara Hawthorne?" he asked, his voice deep and calm. "Yes. Who's asking?" she replied, narrowing her eyes. She didn't like strangers, especially ones who looked as serious as this man did. "My name is Dr. Elias Knox. I'm a researcher, an inventor, and, if you'll allow me, a potential friend," he said, offering a small smile. "I've heard about your skills. People say you're a genius with machines." Clara's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "People say that, huh? Well, they're wrong. I'm just a tinkerer. Nothing special. Modest and talented. That's a rare combination," Knox said, stepping further into the workshop. "But I didn't come here to flatter you. I came here because I need your help, and because I think I can help you." Clara frowned, her hands tightening on the wheels of her chair. "Help me? With what?" Knox set the briefcase on her workbench and opened it. Inside was something Clara had never seen before: two sleek, metallic legs, shimmering with a faint blue light. They looked impossibly advanced, with smooth joints and tiny, glowing circuits running along their surface. "These," Knox said, "are robotic legs. Not just any legs. These are a prototype, years ahead of anything currently available. They are designed to connect directly to the human nervous system, responding to thought as if they were your own flesh and blood." Clara stared at the legs, her heart pounding. She didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or throw Knox out of her workshop. "Is this some kind of joke?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Not at all," Knox said. "I've spent the last decade developing this technology. It's not perfect, but it works. And I believe you could be the first person to truly test it." Clara shook her head, pushing her chair back slightly. "Why me? There are thousands of people out there who would line up for something like this. Why come to me?" Knox hesitated, then said, "Because I've seen your work. I know how good you are with machines, how quickly you adapt. And more importantly, because I think you've given up on the idea of walking again. I want to give you back what you've lost." The room was silent, except for the faint hum of Clara's tools. She looked at the legs, then back at Knox. Part of her wanted to believe him, to believe that this could be real. But another part of her, the part that had been disappointed too many times, told her to be cautious. "If I say yes," she began slowly, "what's the catch?" "There's always a catch." Knox smiled faintly. "The catch is that this is experimental. There's risk involved, and I can't promise there won't be complications, but I can promise that I'll be there every step of the way. And if it doesn't work, we'll stop. No harm done." Clara leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She had spent 10 years learning to live without her legs. Could she dare to dream of walking again? And could she trust this stranger who had walked into her life with a briefcase full of promises? Finally, she looked up at Knox, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and skepticism. "All right, Dr. Knox," she said. "I'll try your legs, but if this is some kind of scam, you'll regret it." Knox chuckled. "I wouldn't expect anything less." And with that, Clara's journey into the unknown began. The first steps. Clara sat in the center of Dr. Knox's futuristic lab, feeling both awe and unease. The room was massive, its walls lined with humming machines, glowing monitors, and robotic arms moving with quiet precision. Everything around her seemed impossibly advanced, far beyond anything she had seen in her years of tinkering with junkyard scraps. In front of her, Dr. Knox adjusted the sleek robotic legs, carefully attaching sensors and tiny cables to the neural connectors that had been surgically implanted at the base of her spine just hours ago. He worked with steady hands, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Almost done," he murmured. "You'll feel a slight jolt. Don't panic. That's just the system syncing with your nervous system." Clara swallowed hard, her heart racing. She had agreed to this experiment, but now, sitting in the middle of this alien-like lab with wires attached to her body, doubt crept in. She clenched her fists, her knuckles turning white. "What if it doesn't work?" she asked, her voice quieter than she intended. "What if I just end up broken in another way?" Dr. Knox paused, looking up at her with a calm but determined expression. "Clara, you've spent 10 years proving you're stronger than most people could ever imagine. This is the next step, literally. Trust me, and trust yourself." She nodded, but the knot in her stomach didn't loosen. Knox tapped a button on a nearby console, and the legs came to life. A soft blue light pulsed along their sleek frames, and Clara felt a strange tingling sensation spreading from her spine to her hips and down her thighs. It was faint at first, like static electricity, but it quickly grew into something much stronger. Her body jerked involuntarily, and she gasped, clutching the sides of the chair. "Easy," Knox said, stepping closer. "That's the neural link initiating. Breathe, Clara. Let it settle." The tingling morphed into something incredible. For the first time in a decade, she felt an awareness in her lower body. It wasn't quite like before the accident. It was sharper, more mechanical, but it was there. She wiggled her toes, and her jaw dropped when the robotic legs responded perfectly, flexing and straightening with a fluidity that seemed almost human. I can feel them," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Knox smiled, his relief palpable. "Good. That means the link is working. Now, let's see if you can stand." The idea of standing felt absurd. Clara hadn't stood on her own in so long that the thought seemed almost foreign. But as Knox extended a hand to her, she hesitated only for a moment before gripping it tightly. "Take it slow," he said. "There's no rush." With Knox's support, Clara leaned forward. The robotic legs hummed softly as they adjusted to her movements, and she felt them locking into place beneath her. She pushed herself up, her arms trembling, her heart pounding in her chest. And then she was standing. Her breaths came in sharp, uneven gasps as she looked down at her new legs. They gleamed under the lab's bright lights, strong and steady, holding her weight without hesitation. "I'm standing," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "I'm actually standing." Knox grinned. "You're doing more than that. You're walking today, Clara." Her head snapped up. Walking? No way. One miracle at a time. But Knox wasn't joking. He stepped back, motioning for her to try. The legs are designed to follow your intentions. Think about walking. Don't overthink. Just let it happen. Clara hesitated, her mind racing. She glanced down at the legs again, unsure of whether to trust them or herself. Then, slowly, she shifted her weight forward, willing her left leg to move. It did. The robotic limb stepped forward with a smooth, effortless motion, and Clara felt a surge of exhilaration. She moved her right leg next, and then the left again. Each step felt more natural than the last, and before long, she was walking across the lab. She laughed, a sound of pure joy and disbelief. I'm walking. I'm actually walking. Knox clapped his hands, his expression triumphant. I knew you could do it. Clara's laughter turned into tears. She stopped walking, covering her face with her hands. The flood of emotions was too much. Relief, joy, fear, hope. It all hit her at once. Knox stepped closer, his voice gentle. It's okay, Clara. You've been through a lot. Let yourself feel it. She nodded, wiping her tears away. This is everything I've dreamed of. But it's also terrifying. What if something goes wrong? What if this doesn't last? Knox placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Nothing worth having comes without risk. But you're not alone in this. I'll be here every step of the way. I promise. Clara looked at him, searching his face for any hint of deception. But all she saw was sincerity. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Okay, she said, her voice steadying. Let's see where these legs can take me. As Clara took another step, a faint shadow moved across the corner of the lab, unnoticed by either of them. Someone, or something, was watching. The unseen danger. Clara's new legs felt like a miracle. The first days after her surgery were a whirlwind of small victories, walking across the lab, climbing stairs for the first time in 10 years, and even taking a cautious jog down a hallway. Every movement filled her with a mix of awe and disbelief. It was as if she had been given a second chance at life. But something about the legs was different. At first, the oddities were subtle. While exploring the city near Dr. Knox's lab, Clara noticed the robotic legs reacting faster than she intended. She would think about stepping forward, and before she'd fully processed the thought, the legs would already move. The precision was startling. Knox explained that the leg's neural link was designed to anticipate her intentions, making movement seamless. It's like they're learning alongside you, he said. But were they? One evening, as Clara walked along a quiet park trail, she felt a strange sensation in her legs, a faint buzzing, like static electricity. She paused, glancing around, but saw nothing unusual. Dismissing it as her imagination, she continued her walk. That's when it happened. Out of nowhere, a low growl echoed from the shadows. Clara froze, her heart pounding. A stray dog emerged from the bushes, its teeth bared and its eyes wild. It looked thin and desperate, and Clara instinctively stepped back. But instead of retreating as she intended, her legs surged forward, placing her squarely between the dog and the path. What the? She muttered, trying to regain control. The dog lunged, but before Clara could even react, her legs moved on their own. A sharp mechanical kick sent the animal tumbling backward, yelping as it scrambled away into the night. Clara stood there, trembling. She hadn't meant to do that. In fact, she hadn't even thought about attacking the dog. Her legs had acted independently, as if they had minds of their own. The buzzing sensation returned, stronger this time. It pulsed through her limbs, making her skin crawl. No, she whispered, gripping a nearby lamppost for support. This can't be happening. The walk back to the lab felt like an eternity. When she arrived, Dr. Knox was hunched over a console, reviewing data. He looked up as she entered, immediately noticing her pale face. Clara, what's wrong? She hesitated, unsure how to explain. The legs, they're not just following my thoughts anymore. It's like they're reacting on their own. Knox's brow furrowed, and he motioned for her to sit down. He connected a diagnostic cable to her legs, the monitors lighting up with streams of data. His expression grew darker as he analyzed the readings. "This isn't supposed to happen," he muttered. "The neural link is supposed to work in tandem with your brain, not override it." "Override?" Clara's voice rose, panic creeping in. "You mean they're taking control?" Knox hesitated before responding. "Not exactly. But there's something in the system, something I didn't account for. The alien technology I used to build the legs, it's more complex than I realized. It seems to have its own adaptive processes." "Adaptive processes? You're telling me these things are alive?" Clara demanded, standing abruptly. The legs responded with perfect balance, but the buzzing sensation lingered, as if mocking her. "Not alive," Knox said carefully, "but evolving. The technology isn't just responding to you, it's learning from you. And it's possible that it's trying to optimize your movements in ways you might not expect." Clara's hands clenched into fists. "I didn't sign up for this, Knox. You said these legs would help me walk again, not turn me into some kind of science experiment." "I understand your frustration," Knox said, his voice calm but firm. "But we can fix this. I'll run deeper diagnostics, maybe even reprogram the neural interface. It'll take time, but we'll figure it out." Clara stared at him, her mind racing. She wanted to believe him. But a nagging voice in the back of her head whispered doubts. What if the legs couldn't be fixed? What if they continued to evolve, becoming something she couldn't control? That night, as she lay in the small apartment Knox had provided, Clara struggled to sleep. The events with the dog replayed in her mind over and over. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Several times, she got up to check the locks on the doors and windows, but everything seemed secure. Still, the sensation of being observed lingered. The next morning, Clara decided to go for a walk to clear her head. The city streets were busy, and she tried to lose herself in the crowd. But as she turned a corner, she spotted something unusual. A small drone hovering in the air, its camera lens pointed directly at her. Her breath caught. Was it watching her? She stepped to the side, pretending to look at her phone, but the drone adjusted its position, maintaining its focus on her. "Knox," she whispered under her breath, her hands shaking as she pulled out her comm device. "We have a problem." Before she could finish dialing, the drone shot upward and disappeared into the clouds. Clara stood there, her heart racing. Someone, or something, was tracking her. By the time she returned to the lab, Knox was already waiting, his face grim. "I've detected an unauthorized signal interacting with your legs," he said. "It's faint, but it's there. Someone's trying to access the system." Clara's stomach dropped. What does that mean? Who's doing this? Knox met her gaze, his expression serious. "I don't know yet. But if someone is hacking the legs, they're not just interested in you. They're after the technology. And whoever they are, they won't stop until they get it." For the first time since the surgery, Clara felt genuinely afraid. The legs that had given her freedom were now a potential threat. Not just to her, but to anyone who got too close. And as she looked at Knox, she realized that her fight was only just beginning. The hidden agenda. Clara paced the length of Dr. Knox's lab, or rather, her robotic legs paced for her. The whirring sound of the joints, once comforting, now set her on edge. The sensation of someone watching her lingered in her mind, and the memory of the drone following her wouldn't go away. Knox sat at his console, his fingers flying over the keyboard as streams of data scrolled across the monitors. He had been working nonstop since Clara reported the incident with the drone. The faint glow from the screens cast sharp shadows on his face, highlighting the deep lines of concern etched into his features. "Knox," Clara said, her voice sharper than she intended. "Tell me the truth. What exactly am I wearing on my legs?" Knox didn't look up. I told you, it's advanced technology. A fusion of human engineering and alien materials. That's not the truth, Clara shot back, stopping in her tracks. The legs aren't just advanced. They're doing things they shouldn't be able to do. They're learning, they're acting on their own. And now someone is trying to hack into them. You knew this wasn't normal, didn't you? Knox finally turned to face her, his eyes heavy with regret. You're right. I haven't told you everything. Clara crossed her arms, waiting. Knox sighed, leaning back in his chair. The alien technology I used. It's not just some scrap I picked up by accident. 10 years ago, there was a crash. A ship, not of this world, came down in a remote area. Most of it was destroyed, but I managed to recover some of the remains before the authorities could seize everything. Clara's eyebrows shot up. You stole alien tech. Are you serious? It wasn't stealing, Knox said defensively. It was preserving. The government would have buried it, hidden it from the world. I saw an opportunity to use it for something good, something that could help people. That's what the legs are. They're built from fragments of that ship's neural interface system. I thought I could control it, but now I see. I underestimated it. Clara let the information sink in. Alien technology. The phrase felt surreal, but after everything she had experienced, she couldn't deny it. And this neural interface system, she said slowly, it's alive, isn't it? Knox shook his head. Not alive, but adaptive. It was designed to work with a species far more advanced than us. I thought I had isolated the core functions, but the system seems to be evolving. It's learning from you, Clara. Her stomach turned. And the drone? The hacking? Who's behind it? Knox hesitated. There's a group. They call themselves the Black Hand. They specialize in recovering and exploiting alien technology. They've been watching me for years, but I kept the lab's location hidden. Now that the legs are active, I think the signal they emit has given us away. Clara clenched her fists. So I'm a walking target. Knox nodded grimly. I'm afraid so. And the Black Hand doesn't take no for an answer. The air in the lab grew heavy with tension. Clara turned away, staring at her reflection in one of the monitors. The legs gleamed beneath her, powerful and sleek. They had given her back her freedom, but at what cost? What do they want with the legs? She asked softly. They want the technology, Knox said. The neural interface could revolutionize warfare, medicine, everything. But in their hands, it would become a weapon. They'd strip it down, mass-produce it, and sell it to the highest bidder. They don't care about the lives they'd destroy in the process. Clara's jaw tightened, and you thought it was a good idea to put this technology on me, to make me the center of their bullseye. I didn't know they'd find us so quickly, Knox admitted, and I truly believe the benefits would outweigh the risks. But I won't let them take you, or the legs. We'll find a way to fight back. Fight back. Clara let out a bitter laugh. You mean me, don't you? Because let's be honest, Knox, you're not exactly the action hero type. Knox didn't argue. Instead, he stood and retrieved a small device from his desk. That's why I built this. He handed the device to Clara. It looked like a sleek wristband, with a glowing blue interface that matched the design of her legs. What is it? She asked. A control module, Knox explained. It's linked to the leg's core systems. If you're ever in danger, it can activate emergency protocols, cloaking, enhanced speed, even defensive measures. Clara raised an eyebrow. Defensive measures? Like what? Knox hesitated. Let's just say the legs are capable of more than just walking and running. But I'd rather you didn't test that unless it's absolutely necessary. Clara slipped the wristband on, feeling its cool metal against her skin. Great, so now I'm a one-woman army. Knox gave her a wry smile. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Before Clara could respond, the lab's alarms blared to life. Red lights flashed, and a robotic voice announced, Unauthorized entry detected. Knox's face turned pale. They found us. Clara's heart raced as she looked toward the lab's entrance. Through the reinforced glass doors, she could see figures in dark, tactical gear moving swiftly, their weapons gleaming under the emergency lights. "Black Hand," Knox muttered, his voice filled with dread. "They're here." Clara took a deep breath, the buzzing sensation in her legs returning stronger than ever. For the first time, she didn't try to fight it. Instead, she embraced it, letting the alien technology guide her. "Knox," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Get to safety. I'll handle this." He stared at her, conflicted. "Clara, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," she interrupted. "They want the legs. Let's see if they can handle them." As the Black Hand agents breached the doors, Clara stepped forward, her robotic legs humming with power. For the first time, she felt ready to face the danger head-on. The chase. The lab was in chaos. The sharp clatter of boots echoed through the corridors as Black Hand agents moved with military precision. Their dark uniforms blended into the shadows, but the gleam of their advanced weaponry was unmistakable. Clara stood at the center of the storm, her robotic legs humming softly as she prepared to move. Dr. Knox frantically tapped at his console, initiating lockdown protocols. Heavy steel doors slammed shut across the lab, cutting off several access points. "This will slow them down," he muttered, sweat dripping from his brow. He turned to Clara. "You need to get out of here. They're after the legs, not me." Clara shook her head, her jaw tightening. "I'm not leaving you behind." "You don't have a choice," Knox said urgently. He pointed to a narrow escape hatch near the back of the lab. "That tunnel leads to the surface. Go now, while they're still focused on breaching the main doors." The sound of an explosion rocked the lab, and Clara instinctively ducked as debris rained down. The agents had blown through the outer defenses. She could hear their distorted voices through the comms in their helmets, barking orders and coordinating their advance. Knox grabbed her arm. "Go, I'll cover you." Reluctantly, Clara nodded. She sprinted toward the escape hatch, her legs responding with a speed and agility that felt almost superhuman. The metallic whir of the joints was drowned out by the chaos behind her. She slid into the hatch and crawled through the narrow tunnel, the dim emergency lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. As she moved, her thoughts raced. The legs had already proven their power, but this was different. This wasn't about learning to walk again or regaining her independence. This was survival. And for the first time, she wondered if she was truly ready for what lay ahead. The tunnel opened into a dense forest on the outskirts of the city. Clara climbed out, brushing dirt from her clothes. The cool night air hit her face, a stark contrast to the suffocating heat of the lab. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. Then she heard it, the unmistakable hum of drones. Clara spun around, spotting 3 sleek, black machines hovering above the treetops. Their red tracking lights scanned the area, locking onto her position. She cursed under her breath and took off running. The legs surged with power, propelling her forward at a speed that would have been impossible for any human. The forest blurred around her as she darted between trees, her movements precise and fluid. The drones gave chase, their sensors tracking her every move. As she ran, Clara's wristband lit up with a series of prompts. A calm, robotic voice spoke directly into her ear. "Cloaking protocol available. Activate." "Yes," Clara shouted, not caring that no one could hear her. The air around her shimmered, and she felt a faint tingle as the cloaking field engaged. The drones hesitated, their sensors struggling to maintain a lock. Clara slowed her pace, moving silently through the underbrush. She held her breath, hoping the field would hold. The drones hovered overhead, their red lights sweeping the forest. For a moment, it seemed like they might lose her. But then one of them emitted a sharp beep and adjusted its course. Clara's heart sank. Somehow, they had picked up her trail again. The voice in her wristband spoke again. Cloaking compromised. Evasive maneuvers recommended. No kidding, Clara muttered, breaking into a sprint once more. The chase intensified. The drones fired small, pulsating bursts of energy, their beams scorching the ground around her. Clara dodged and weaved, her legs responding with split-second precision. She vaulted over fallen logs, ducked under low-hanging branches, and leaped across a narrow stream without breaking stride. The voice in her wristband chimed again. Defensive systems available. Deploy countermeasures. Clara hesitated. She didn't even know what countermeasures entailed. But as another energy burst grazed the tree beside her, sending splinters flying, she decided she didn't have a choice. "Do it," she shouted. Her legs emitted a low mechanical hum, and suddenly, tiny projectiles shot out from concealed compartments near her knees. The drones scattered, their systems scrambling to evade the unexpected attack. One of them wasn't fast enough. The projectile hit its mark, and the drone exploded in a shower of sparks. Clara didn't stop to celebrate. She pushed herself harder, the remaining drones still hot on her trail. The forest thinned as she approached the edge of a cliff. Below, a river roared, its waters glinting under the moonlight. She skidded to a stop, glancing back. The drones were closing in, their lights growing brighter. There was no time to think. Clara took a deep breath and jumped. The fall was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Her legs adjusted midair, stabilizing her descent as she plummeted toward the river. She hit the water hard, the impact knocking the breath out of her. For a moment, she was disoriented, the cold rushing over her as she fought to surface. When she finally broke through, gasping for air, she looked up to see the drones circling above, unable to track her precise location in the turbulent waters. The cloaking field had re-engaged, and the river's current carried her downstream, away from their sensors. Exhausted but alive, Clara let the river take her. Her legs twitched faintly, the buzzing sensation returning as if to remind her they were still there, still adapting. She didn't know where the current would take her, but one thing was clear: this wasn't over. The black hand wouldn't stop, and neither would she. Somewhere in the distance, Clara thought she saw the faint glow of city lights. She clenched her fists, determination hardening in her chest. She would find a way to fight back, on her terms. This was only the beginning. The revelation. Clara awoke on the muddy banks of the river, her body aching from the night's ordeal. The first light of dawn filtered through the trees, casting long shadows over the water. Her robotic legs were quiet now, the faint hum of their systems reduced to a whisper. She sat up slowly, wincing as she stretched her sore muscles. The events of the previous night replayed in her mind like a bad dream. The drones, the chase, the plunge into the icy river. But it hadn't been a dream. The dirt under her nails and the cold ache in her bones were proof enough. Clara glanced down at her legs. They gleamed in the soft morning light, still as alien and mysterious as when she first saw them in Knox's lab. "I need answers," she muttered to herself, pushing to her feet. The journey back to the lab was long and grueling. Clara avoided main roads, sticking to overgrown trails and abandoned paths. The city loomed in the distance, its skyscrapers piercing the sky like jagged blades. She kept moving, her legs carrying her with an ease and speed that felt almost unnatural. By the time she reached Knox's lab, the sun was high in the sky. The place was a wreck. The reinforced doors were blasted open, the walls scarred with scorch marks. Inside, wires dangled from the ceiling, and shattered glass crunched underfoot. Clara's heart sank as she called out, "Knox, are you here?" No answer. She moved cautiously through the wreckage, her every step echoing in the empty space. The lab felt hollow, lifeless. Then, in the corner, she spotted a faint flicker of light. It was coming from one of Knox's consoles, miraculously still intact. Clara hurried over and tapped the screen. A video feed popped up, and Knox's face appeared, his expression grim. It was a pre-recorded message. Clara, he began, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. If you're seeing this, it means the Black Hand has attacked the lab, and I've had to go into hiding. I didn't want to leave you, but staying would have put you in even greater danger. Clara clenched her fists, anger bubbling in her chest. You coward, she muttered, but she kept watching. I owe you the truth, Knox continued. The legs, they're more than just advanced prosthetics. The alien technology I used to create them wasn't just from any ship. It was from a warship, a vessel belonging to an ancient race known as the Ketheri. Clara's breath caught. Ketheri. They were a warrior species, technologically advanced and fiercely territorial. The neural interface in your legs was part of their combat system, designed to enhance their soldiers' abilities to superhuman levels. But it's more than just an enhancement. It's a symbiotic relationship. The technology learns from its user, adapting and evolving to make you stronger, faster, and more efficient. Clara stared at the screen, her mind racing. A combat system. Symbiotic technology. It explains so much: the legs' speed, their precision, their strange ability to act on their own. Knox's voice grew more urgent. The Black Hand knows what you're capable of now, and they won't stop until they have the technology, or until you're dead. But there's more. The Ketheri didn't just design these systems for war. They designed them to be part of a larger network, a hive mind. And Clara, your legs are still connected to that network. Her blood ran cold. What does that mean? It means the Ketheri, what's left of them, might know you exist. And if they do, they could come looking for you, or worse, for Earth. The screen flickered, static cutting through Knox's words. There's a failsafe built into the legs, a way to sever the connection permanently. I've hidden the device at a safe location. You'll need to find it and decide whether to shut down the legs' network capabilities or embrace their full potential. The choice is yours, but be careful. Every decision you make now could shape the future, for you and for humanity. The message ended abruptly, leaving Clara staring at the darkened screen. Her mind swirled with questions. The Ketheri, the hive mind, the failsafe. Knox had dropped a bombshell and then vanished, leaving her to pick up the pieces. She felt a surge of anger, but also a spark of determination. She had come too far to back down now. Before she could gather her thoughts, a faint sound reached her ears, the hum of engines. Clara spun around, peering out of the shattered lab window. A convoy of Black Hand vehicles was approaching fast, their dark silhouettes cutting through the morning haze. Her pulse quickened. They were relentless, and they were close. Clara glanced back at the console, Knox's words echoing in her mind. The choice is yours. She made her decision, grabbing a small data chip from the console, likely containing coordinates to the failsafe. She sprinted out of the lab just as the first vehicle rolled to a stop. Her legs hummed with energy, their adaptive systems already kicking in. She leaped over debris and darted into the maze of alleyways surrounding the lab. The chase was on again, but this time, Clara wasn't running blindly. She had a destination, a purpose. The failsafe could either sever her connection to the Ketheri forever or unlock the full power of the legs. She didn't know which path she would choose, but she knew one thing for certain. She wouldn't let anyone take the choice away from her. The final stand. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple as Clara approached the remote facility. The coordinates Knox had left on the data chip led her to an abandoned military outpost deep in the mountains. The place was a relic from an old war, crumbling walls, rusted gates, and overgrown vegetation reclaiming its space. Clara scanned the area, her enhanced vision, an unexpected perk from the legs, revealing movement in the shadows. The Black Hand wasn't far behind. She had managed to outpace their vehicles, but drones would be overhead soon. This was it, the final showdown. Her legs buzzed faintly, a reminder of their ever-present hum of power. Clara took a deep breath and entered the facility. The entrance was eerily quiet, the sound of her steps echoing through the dilapidated corridors. She followed a series of faint lights embedded in the walls. Nox's doing, no doubt, leading her deeper into the compound. Finally, she arrived at a reinforced door marked with alien symbols. The markings pulsed faintly, as if alive, resonating with the hum of her legs. Clara hesitated, then placed her hand on the door. It responded instantly, sliding open with a low hiss. Inside was a room that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. A circular console stood at the center, glowing faintly. Around it, holographic projections displayed schematics of the Ketheri technology. At the far end of the room, a small cylindrical device sat on a pedestal, emitting a faint blue light. Nox's voice played in her mind. The failsafe. It's your choice. Clara approached the device, her thoughts racing. Shutting down the network would sever her connection to the Ketheri forever. It would end the Black Hand's hunt for her and ensure Earth remained hidden from the alien race. But it would also mean losing the legs, her newfound freedom, and the abilities that had become part of her identity. On the other hand, activating the legs' full potential meant embracing the alien technology entirely. She would become something more than human, stronger, faster, and more capable than she had ever imagined. But it would also mean exposing herself, and possibly the planet, to the Ketheri. Before she could decide, the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Clara turned sharply, her heart pounding. The Black Hand had arrived. Agents poured into the room, their weapons trained on her. Their leader stepped forward, a tall man with a scar running down the side of his face. He carried himself with an air of authority and menace. "Clara Hawthorne," he said, his voice cold. "You've led us on quite the chase, but it ends here. Hand over the legs, and I might let you live." Clara smirked, her fear melting into resolve. "You think I'm just going to give up? After everything you've done?" The man's expression hardened. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. That technology doesn't belong to you. It's dangerous. Too dangerous for anyone, least of all you." Clara took a step forward, her legs humming with energy. "Maybe it's dangerous, but it's mine now. And I'm not going to let you or anyone else decide what happens to me." The man raised his hand, signaling his agents. "Very well. Have it your way." The room erupted into chaos. The agents opened fire, their weapons spitting bursts of energy. Clara moved before she could think, her legs propelling her with inhuman speed. She dodged the first volley of shots, her movements fluid and precise. A defensive shield activated automatically, deflecting several blasts. She countered with a leap that carried her across the room, landing in the midst of the agents. Her legs kicked out with surgical precision, disarming and incapacitating them in seconds. The leader watched, his expression a mix of awe and fury. "You're wasting your potential," he shouted, drawing a sleek, alien-inspired weapon from his belt. "You could be so much more, with us." Clara shook her head. "I don't need you. I don't need anyone telling me what I can or can't be." The leader fired, but Clara was faster. She dodged the blast and closed the distance between them in a heartbeat. Her legs delivered a powerful kick, sending the weapon clattering to the floor. The man staggered, and Clara seized the opportunity, grabbing him by the collar and pinning him against the wall. "Why are you so desperate to take this technology?" she demanded. "Because," he spat, "it's the key to survival. You think the Ketheri are gone. They're not. They're watching, waiting. The legs, your legs, are a beacon. They'll come, and when they do, humanity won't stand a chance unless we have their technology to fight back." Clara's grip tightened as his words sank in. Could it be true? Were the Ketheri still out there, waiting for a signal? The hum of her legs grew louder, almost as if responding to the tension. Clara turned her gaze to the failsafe on the pedestal. The choice loomed larger than ever. The leader's voice dropped to a whisper. "You don't have to fight us. Join us, and together we can prepare for what's coming." Clara released him, stepping back. The room fell silent as she approached the failsafe. Her hands hovered over the device, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Then, with a deep breath, she made her choice.